Seriously guys, how is it possible we're in the middle of the 2024 already? So I did a couple of videos earlier in the year detailing all the games I'd played in the months of January and February and giving an overview / quick review / journal of what I'd been playing. But in typical me fashion, I couldn't keep up with the volume of games I was playing, and so I came across a potential plan B whilst perusing what YouTube recommended I watched. Lo and behold, a video popped up from the excellent Chairman of the Ball channel, where the man himself was ranking the 10 most recent games he'd played, which I thought was quite ingenious and perfect for me to take inspiration from, because A, it doesn't mandate monthly uploads, and B, because I think ranking games that will quite often have no connection between them thematically, mechanically, or new word ink, complexitively, would be a novel idea. So for the sake of everyone's patience as this preamble labours on, let's just get this show on the road on this, the first episode of Top 10 New Games to Me. Number 10 on this inaugural list is Disney Animated, the very definition of an impulse buy, as I thought the good lady might like it. Like many Prospero Hall games, it's the polished presentation and IP that will grab your attention. I haven't even heard of it before I exchanged some gold coins for it, so risk was high, and I suppose as it's propping up the rear here, it didn't really pay off. It's an interesting concept, slowly build up a single frame cell from one of a handful of Disney classics, using the typewriter method of empowering your actions, most notably employed recently by Ark Nova. There is a sound mechanical base to this game, it's just that it all feels a little bit flat. Few of your turns feel particularly rewarding. There's firefighting involved as the villain in whatever Disney production you're playing requires you to use resources and actions to stop them royally mention you over, but the whole thing feels meh. Like on paper it should have been much better than it is, but in practice it's just not a game I'm in a rush to get back to. Numero 9 is a reskin of a favourite of mine and the little ladies. Here, cats become canines in Dog Lover, a card drafting and resource collection game where a 3x3 grid of cards is your marketplace, and thematically applied dog tricks are what dictates what cards you can take on your turn. You start, however, by picking a row or column of your choice, taking those cards and placing them in your tableau. The aim then is to obtain dogs on the open market and make sure you get enough grub to get them fed and score points off them. Dog Lover's remit was to add some bells and whistles to the tried and trusted cat lady formula, and to be honest, the old if it ain't broke don't fix it comes to mind. You've still got your special dogs that have bespoke needs and point scoring, and toys that accrue you points, but the traits that have been added feel a little bit manhandled into this game, and so much as I do in a vacuum quite like this game, I would always choose to play Cat Lady over it. Meow! Nummer 8 is another game to feature Animalia, this time in the B-shaped variety. Apiary stars the aforementioned hyper-intelligent insects that take over from whence extinct humans left off. This is equal parts traditional worker placement and irregular action selection, with the interesting twist of you powering up your worker bees. You'll be bumping workers back to their respective player boards when you place yours, and it's at this point they get a level up, ready to fight the good fight again until they get too roided up and have to hibernate. I think it's that uber familiar worker placement action selection that contrasts nicely with the things that are done a little bit differently that give the game its sea legs. Over there's a little exploration board, over here there's your hex-shaped tableau that will see you paying for farms, recruits and developments, and underpinning it all is a bunch of resource conversion and management going on. For me, despite some interesting elements to the game, I wasn't completely bowled over by it, but still, I'd be more than happy to see this hit the table every so often, and it's a testament to the quality of what's to come. Numero 7 is Nucleum, a game I had fairly high hopes for due to the pedigree of its co-designers. The theme looked cool enough at a glance. Let's roll the dice. Scratch that, no dice. Plenty of tiles though. Whether it's laying train tracks to pave the way to energise your buildings, or the clever use of multi-action tiles that dictate your course of action on your turn, there's a decent smattering of things going on. A lot of talk has been about how this compares to Brass Birmingham, and although I can see the similarities, it's very specific to the networking and feeding of your buildings. Yes, you can feed bricks and mortar. I won't hear it said otherwise. Ironically, it's also relatable somewhat to Great Western Trail with its placed buildings and engine building tracks. Relatable, but not really. Maybe it's because both of these comparisons are against stone cold classics that make it a point of discussion, but Nucleum rightly stands as its own entity. And whilst there's a lot to like about it and its polish as all get out, there was no one thing that grabbed me by the short and curlies and asked me for my breakfast order. Rest assured, there is no disappointment in this box, just a good enough seal of approval. Number 6 is the biggest small box game you will ever play, full stop. Now, don't get me wrong, Planet Unknown with its luscious Lazy Susan was bound to take up a lot of space looking at its components, but for a pure polyomino tile placement game with progression tracks bolted on, this will invariably not be the game you expected when unboxing. Alas, that does not have to be a bad thing. I like most of what's on offer here as you spread your polyomino puzzle over your planet's surface themed board. There are the usual restrictions to where you can play what, and that feels organic and somewhat thematic in equal measure. The addition of the progression tracks is a welcome one because it adds a layer of complexity to what you place and where. And the Lazy Susan is also a welcome touch, because although it takes up a lot of space in the box, it keeps the mountain of tiles organised and most importantly enables the rotation of the available tiles for each player on their turn. I really do like this game, I just worry its heft will stop it seeing more game time. Numero 5 takes us to a time where magicians were the talk of the town, and Trickerion, Legends of Illusion, does its level best to bring that world to the table. This, functionally speaking at least, worker placement games feels idiosyncratic in so many ways, which I like to think is intentional, leaning into the theme of deception and smoke and mirrors, but hey ho. But by that I mean all the mechanics are familiar but ever so slightly adjacent to what you'd expect. Yes, there's placement blocking, but mostly it's a case of get there first and get a bonus or discount to do so. The nuts and bolts of the game though are identifying magic tricks you want to learn, obtain the materials for, and then get to performing them. Each piece of the puzzle feels incremental because you're working towards something at the end of each round, and although the payoff is scalable dependent on how grand your ambitions are, there's so much to consider as you build in waves towards that crescendo whenever it's showtime. I think although I wasn't necessarily buzzing after playing this game, it's ultimately different and thematically enjoyable enough that I do very much look forward to seeing whether this gets even better over time. Numavia is one of the hypier games of recent times, at least one that isn't a sequel or a rehash anyway. Hegemony, lead your class to victory attempts, at least on the surface and in a fairly abstract way, to simulate how the world works, at least in places where government and capitalism hold sway. And in that sense this feels like if board games were a homework assignment. Its beating heart though is its asymmetry. Up to 4 players, solo is included with the Crisis and Control expansion, take control in order of player count, the working class, responsible for most of the labour, the capitalist class, who take the lead albeit not exclusively of industry, then the middle class that kind of straddles between the two, and then finally the state. It really would be too much to describe how each play in any form of granularity, but suffice to say each player is looking to enhance their primary and or secondary resources and ultimately influence on the board state. There's lots of push and pull on display. It's not a zero-sum game, but there's never an action or a move that won't help someone and hurt someone else, leaving you to really feel like you're influencing proceedings on a national scale. Such an exceptional effort, and even if it's a bit straight-laced, it's still a highly rewarding experience. Numero 3 is an oldie but undoubtedly a goodie. Through the ages, a new story of civilization. It's the latest edition of a game that originally harks back to 2006, and I suppose is the definitive Civilization board game, or at least the one that sets the standard. It also is really just a card game. Yes, it's complex and there are tokens and tracks and whatnot, but the cards are the only things that really matter. Drafting in a form of marketplace is how you obtain said cardboard, representing historical leaders of all different persuasions that give you often temporary variable player powers. Technologies that you can learn through focusing on scientific production and development, and wonders form the cherry on top. As well, who doesn't like a wonder to gawk at? Juggling your resources is where a lot of the difficulty comes into play. It's not as simple as buy as much as you can, generate as many resources as possible, because there's always an indirect cost to expansion. Whether it's the happiness of your population or the need to keep a competent military to keep poachers at bay, you'll be both forging your own singular path and juggling lots of balls all at the same time. To think that they managed to cram all this content into what is really just a card game centric board game is a stellar achievement. My number 2 is Beyond the Sun, and whilst yes, much is made of this being a game of tech trees, it is most definitely more than that. At the very heart of all the action is your pawn, your peg, your little Miss Do-It-All, hopping from one action to the next. Initially reduced to just the basic actions, you'll develop your engine by researching and advancing your influence across the 4 types of action available that are represented by the different tracks: scientific, military, economic and commercial. Now, fair enough, there's only so much diversity in what each of those categories enable you to do, but the system and iconography become so clear and accessible in no time at all that the barrier to entry for this game is not half as arduous as it might look. You've then got the secondary theatre of influence, the interplanetary board, where your fleet is represented by the dice you spawn from your player board, and the various actions you can choose will expand said fleet and allow you to move from planet to planet, exerting your influence area majority style at each location. What ultimately sets this up on high for me is the expanding decision space as you progress through the tech trees. It's a genuinely awesome hook for a splendid game. And numero uno for this here list is Darwin's Journey. I really did just get immersed in this one thematically from the get-go. That's probably due to my own interest as much as anything else, but chronicling the travels of Charles Darwin through the Galapagos Islands is presented exceptionally well here. This is functionally speaking a brutal worker placement game in terms of space blocking, but with great difficulty comes great reward, and this is a game chock full of payoff. So whilst it's your workers which are doing the legwork, is your ability to tacitly upgrade your workers by obtaining wax seals that effectively open up more impactful worker spaces. You'll then be visiting every corner of the board by exploring the islands, in so doing researching new specimens and establishing campsites, navigating the ship you're travelling on to gain access to new islands and points of interest, and sending correspondence to gain access to end round rewards, and transporting specimens back to the museum, which boosts your income early game and later will more likely see you advancing along the theory of evolution track, which is that final piece of the puzzle and one of the bigger payouts for point scoring. It's not that often a game so brutally restrictive in terms of the choices you have can empower you to feel like you're capable of creating an impactful turn nonetheless. Most importantly, however, Darwin's Journey is here to provide us with a very satisfying inclusion to my collection. And there you have it, the last 10 games that were new to me and where I ranked them based on my initial playthroughs. Let me know if you enjoyed how this random assortment of games were compiled into a top 10 list. I for sure enjoyed talking about and recollecting my memories of these games. Alas, I have been the voice of Benji, and this video has ended. Meow! Seriously, that sounded like a cat on its way out. Meow! It's just it's a different cat every time. Meow!